this is Jeff from GMT-5.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Longines Legend Diver. This is another release from the Longines Heritage line, which is all about reviving their mid-century classics. You know, those iconic watches that really embody Longines DNA. Collectors tend to get pretty excited about this one in particular because, like the Conquest Heritage, it's a faithful reproduction of a legendary watch. The original was released in 1960 and had two crowns with an inner rotating bezel. The reissue was first released in 2007 without a date, and then in 2009 Longines produced a date version, finally retiring the no-date version a couple years ago. Which is a bummer because naturally, for its truth to the original model and its symmetry, collectors tend to prefer no date to the one with an aperture. But the date version is nothing to snub your nose at. It's also a nice watch. The case in the Legend Diver measures 42 millimeters, which is surprisingly the same size as the original Diver. Although 42 millimeters feels right on the mark for us today, wrists weren't used to 42 in the 1960s. You can imagine how big this must have been. The Heritage Conquest was upped several millimeters to be more of contemporary size when, back in the 1950s you would have expected it to be around, 36 millimeters. So, it's a big jump up, but, from the Legend Diver standpoint, it's relatively unchanged. The lugs on this watch are extraordinarily long, as was the original, so it does wear quite large. You're looking at a 52 millimeter lug-to-lug distance that really pushes my size limit on my 6 3/4 inch wrist. A little over 13 millimeters thick, it owes much of that thickness to its proudly domed sapphire crystal, which is shaped just like the original plexiglass. This is one of my favorite aspects of the case. I really love protruding crystals and think Longines did a great job with this one. The dual crowns are both cross-hatched like you would see on the 1960s version, with the crown at 2 o'clock controlling the inner rotating bezel, and the 4 o'clock crown adjusts the time and date, and both crowns screw down to preserve water resistance, which is a feature the old one in fact did not have. I'm not going to go into depth on this, but this particular model, and probably even the 1960s inspiration, did not use a true supercompressor case, although it does share many characteristics of these patented cases made by EPSA. For more information, please see GMT-5.com and read the full review, and you can see kind of why I think that. From the hands to the hour markers, the design is spot on to the original, and Longines even gave an aged appearance to the dial and bezel markings to add some vintage appeal to the watch. Even the date wheel conforms to the design, which is why I say it's not just a bad version. Longines didn't just put a white date wheel on there, and I really appreciate that, because that really would have ruined the watch. And so if you require the date, I think that this version is actually a pretty good date version, even though it's not as symmetrical or true to the original 1960s version. This is a screw-down case back, and just like you would see in the original 1960s version, there is a diver here that's been put in relief on the case back, so that's a nice touch as well. The original Longines Diver housed an automatic caliber 290 from Longines. Was an in-house movement. The Heritage Legend Diver unfortunately does not have an in-house movement. It does use the L3.674.4.50.0, which is an ETA 2824-2. Nothing to write home about, however, it is a reliable and sturdy movement, and definitely going to help keep costs down, which allows this watch to be relatively affordable. This watch comes on a synthetic sailcloth strap that's lined with something like nubic or felt on the underside. It's super comfortable and requires almost no break-in for it to conform to your wrist. I really like the buckle since its cross-hatching coordinates well with the two crowns. My only complaint is with the keepers. The floating keeper is a real wanderer, so after a couple of hours, the loose end of the strap sticks out. It's a real pet peeve of mine. However, if I really wanted to fix it, the 22 millimeter lug width makes getting aftermarket straps really, really easy. If you like the look of vintage watches but aren't as keen on the mechanical inevitabilities that can be frustrating, then the Legend Diver is a good option for you. At $2,300, it's priced right for a vintage-inspired piece built from the blueprints of an iconic watch and made to today's quality standards. Until next time, this is Jeff from GMT-5.com, and we'll see you again soon.